Through my talk today, I'm trying to analyze one of the burning questions of today's world. Who is responsible for the downfall of today's youth? Youths today have become so insensitive to problems. They are careless, they do not value their culture, they do not have a vision, and the list goes on and on. How often do you hear these questions? I mean, I've heard this innumerable times, and I bet we all are in the same page. You know, as youths, when we try to analyze our own behavior, we come across various instances that makes us believe that, yeah, maybe the above mentioned statements are true. But again, there are various reasons why a youth might show certain attributes which are not acceptable. Now, the real question is, what does downfall of youth actually mean, and who is responsible for this downfall? Now, again, there are various reasons, and amidst those reasons, one such is society. The way society views the youth of today has a huge impact on the behavior they show. On a similar note, I remember an African proverb that states, "It takes a whole village to raise a child, not parents alone." I repeat, it takes a whole village to raise a child, not parents alone. The way society views the youth of today is some way or the other responsible for the downfall of youth. Having said this, I'd like to talk about the social influence theory. This theory states that people have the tendency to behave according to the environment around them, by which I mean they are likely to behave in a way what they view as a norm. So this theory is divided into two parts: conformity and compliance. Conformity means a person is showing a certain behavior under the pressure of a group by setting aside his or her own set of beliefs, whereas compliance means a person behaving in order to fulfill the wishes of others to avoid any consequences. Now, when we talk about social influence, vulnerability, it plays a very important role out here. Now, vulnerability is a two-edged sword. Being vulnerable and not being vulnerable, both are very dangerous. So it's very hard to find a balance in between. Therefore, like most people, they usually fall into the earlier category where they are vulnerable to the environment around them. Again, researchers and reports have repeatedly shown that youths today are very vulnerable. You know, talking about India, in India, there are more number of youths in terms of population, but since the Indian youths are cared less, they tend to become careless. The Indian society is structured in a way where the focus is on the patriarchal head of the family. Now let's come back to the point. I'm not trying to justify the actions of today's youths, but I believe everything has to be seen through various perspectives, and this is just one of my perspectives. Now, one question to the audience: do you have the right to take decisions for yourself? Do you take decisions for yourself, or do your parents take decisions for you? Now, if I have to talk about me personally, it is my elders who have been taking decisions for me. Now, this too has a negative impact. When a person keeps taking decisions for you repeatedly, you tend to depend on that person. You create a mindset, you create an understanding that even if you don't do certain things, someone will definitely do it for you. That is basic human psychology. You know, in the Indian context, the ideas, opinions, perspectives of us youths, it's not considered because society believes we are not experienced enough. But again, the same society will expect you to behave practically. When ideas, opinions, and perspectives are discussed, analyzed, and understood, they have the tendency to transform into revolutionary visions. But if neglected, they'll surely have negative impacts. You know, even the most intelligent person is likely to feel stupid after repeatedly hearing negative remarks. Example is John Keats. John Keats, during his lifetime, was never considered a prominent poet, and he died thinking he was a failure. For almost 4 years after his death, his poems were published, and the rest is history. We all know John Keats. Moving on to the choices of career. Most youths today, they choose their career either under pressure or to fulfill the wishes of the family. I can say this because I shamefully fall into that category. You know, when you are good in academics, the society, the people around you, they believe that you are cut out for that science background, the great science background. So like people around me, they always used to say, Surabhi, you are good in studies, you go for science, you become a doctor, you become an engineer. That was the thing which I used to repeatedly hear from people around me. So by the time I was writing my 10th board exam, I'd already made up my mind to take up science. I still remember the first day when I entered class 11 science of Nirmala Convent, proudly as a science student. And by the end of that very first week, I'd already realized how big of a fool I was. For 2 years, I struggled, and I don't even know the number of times I've considered myself a failure in that 2 years. I studied only for the sake of studying. And you know, when you start doing things for the sake of doing it, you tend to lose yourself. Yes, I lost myself. Again, talking about the Indian context. Being born, studying well, choosing a career which is categorized by the society, earning well, settling down, having a family. All of these are considered as a norm. And any deviation from this part is considered problematic. Therefore, like most of us youths, we tend to follow this trajectory, this very trajectory that has been set by the society. But again, the same society has the audacity to say youths are not revolutionary. Most youths today are simply following the predefined norms of the society, and because of which the generation war has already begun. And if this problem is not addressed sooner, it will have huge impact in the future. On a concluding note, I'd like to add, yes, I do respect the opinion of my elders, but I also believe that with changing time, our opinions must change, otherwise the society will be crippled.